Before I had even heard the terms introvert and extrovert, I found it difficult to make sense of why I did not seem to thrive in the same environments as some of the people around me seemed to. I thought that no one would understand if I declined going out somewhere for what seemed like no valid reason. You know, when you're 14, 15, or 16 and it seems like most other people want to go out and do stuff all the time while you don't, saying something like, "Oh yeah, no, I'll have to decline because I want to go home and do absolutely nothing," can make you feel kind of weird. I do want to say that I don't even know that I'm particularly fond of the words introvert and extrovert, to be honest, because it sort of implies that it's black and white, as if a person is either or, when in reality, you're somewhere on the spectrum where you're either more introverted or extroverted. And I also think that it creates this sort of box of expectations where if someone is acting in a way that contradicts the general belief of what being an introvert or an extrovert is, it kind of invites statements such as, well, you don't act like an introvert because you XYZ, as if there is a checklist of behaviors that must be crossed off in order to qualify. So I just think that it creates misconceptions. But for the sake of simplicity and for this video, I will be using those words, but I just wanted to get that out there. So I've been trying to find a way to sort of define what introversion means to me in practice and to better understand myself. And I know that I would have wanted to come across a video like this growing up, or even now. I think learning about how other people view the world can be really valuable. So I wanted to share some of those things with you all today. I'd like to start with talking about the environment. So it's pretty known that introverts tend to prefer environments that are less stimulating. We are stimulation minimalists, so to speak. That kind of sounds weird, but I think it's an easy way to look at it. So, for instance, I remember at one of my last workplaces, which was an office job, cubicles, aka 8 hours of small talk, we would have after work, i.e. drinks and socializing, every Friday and sometimes during the week. And when you're introverted and you've already spent that many hours in a highly stimulating environment, all you really need is your own peace and quiet. And mind you that I use the word need and not want because that's really what it can feel like. And that doesn't have to do anything with disliking your colleagues or disliking your job. It's just that socializing on top of socializing, or put differently, stimulation on top of stimulation, oftentimes equals total exhaustion for a lot of introverts. And like I mentioned earlier, when I was younger, I thought that it was weird to say no for what seemed like no valid reason. But as the years have gone by, I've learned that I'm the one who decides what a valid reason is for myself. And if the people around you don't understand that, I think that you should have an extra look at who you are surrounding yourself with. And now let's talk about casualty. Casual friends, casual conversations. I can do it for some time. I might possibly, in some cases, even enjoy it, but not for too long because it makes me feel like I could have spent that energy on something else instead. And I realize that that might sound kind of snobbish, like, oh, introverts think that their time is more valuable than everyone else's, and no, it's as simple as the fact that different people prefer to spend their time in different ways. Someone who is extroverted might consider sitting by themselves for hours and just getting lost in thought as a waste of time, while for someone who is introverted, that might be considered valuable time, and neither is more right than the other. And now that does not mean that introverts cannot handle casualty. Actually, none of this is about what anyone is and isn't able to handle at all. It's simply about what's preferred and what makes you feel good. So technically, I could handle going to dinner with a group of 15 strangers, but unless I felt a connection to someone there, I would probably feel pretty lost and perhaps even lonely. It's the whole feeling lonelier in a room full of people than I do alone kind of situation. But on the other hand, I could connect with someone, and there is probably nothing more fulfilling than the feeling of being able to talk to someone for hours and just feel that link, or sometimes talking very little or maybe not even at all, yet it just clicks. And now I'd like to talk about finding an outlet of expression. So this one is probably the most important thing that I've learned to understand. I think that as human beings, finding ways to express ourselves is essential. It's through self-expression that we get to communicate our ideas and thoughts about the world and everything in it. So when we express ourselves, we learn about ourselves, which then helps us navigate through life to make better decisions for ourselves and to get clarity. And there are so many different forms of expression. Art, dance, talking is the obvious one, but one of the most powerful tools, in my opinion, and one that basically anyone can do, is writing. Now, I always talk about what an important role writing has played in my life. I have been journaling for 15 plus years, and I recommend everyone to get into it. And as someone who expresses themselves better in writing, it's important for me to constantly feel like I'm improving the way I express myself and to become more confident. And I found that using a writing assistance tool can really come in handy. So I have been using Grammarly, which is also today's sponsor. It's very easy to use. You just add it to your browser and it helps you across the web. So Grammarly's free version provides basic and grammar spell checks, but upgrading to Grammarly Premium provides vocabulary enhancement suggestions, plagiarism checks, and other cool features which I really like when using the editor. So depending on what it is that I'm writing, I choose between different levels of formality, emotional tone, intent, and more. And being able to customize it like that according to my needs is really useful. So for instance, if I just want to write down my feelings, I can choose describe as my intent. When I write for my videos, I will sometimes go with telling a story. If I'm writing an email, I will usually want to sound more formal and so on. So when in the editor, I just write in my text, I see how it's performing, and I just adjust it accordingly depending on what it is that I want. Now, if you would like to try out Grammarly for yourself, you can sign up for a free account at grammarly.com/Lana Blakely and get 20% off the premium version at the top of the page. And I'll leave a link for that in the description box as well. And now lastly, I would like to talk about labels. Now, although there is comfort to be found in identifying ourselves with certain labels such as introvert or extrovert, I think it's important to remind oneself that it should be used as a way to lift us and not limit us, which is probably one of the more important things that I've learned and that I try to remind myself of. Learning about yourself and finding out that you belong to a certain group of people, be it introversion or a personality type or anything like that, is comforting, no doubt. But I don't think that we should identify so closely with something that we don't even bother searching for anything outside of it. A sort of fixed mindset that makes it less likely for us to step out of our comfort zone, basically. Something that I believe to be really important in order to grow. So for instance, if you value deep relationships, but you absolutely hate small talk, and therefore you avoid trying to get to know people overall, you will be missing out on those potential relationships because small talk is usually how most conversations start out. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't think it's a good idea to miss out on life because you are so closely tied to these labels that you don't do anything that is stepping outside of it and that would potentially make you uncomfortable. I also don't think that we should identify so closely with something that we feel like we need to adhere to certain expectations about what that label means. Like, you don't need to love books and hate parties to consider yourself an introvert. There's been times in my life when I've loved going out every day and I've gotten to know new people, and it's been times in my life when I'm at home every day and I don't talk to anyone but my plants. Does that change my nature? Of course not. It just means that I'm human and not a one-sided object, and neither are you. And that was it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out the link in the description box, and please leave any thoughts that you might have on this topic in the comment section, and I will see you there.